Hey everybody, it's Doug guys. We're back with my video. Now we're using a different microphone here. My last microphone burned out, so we're stuck with a really cheap, I'm like talking like $20 web camera microphone here. So it's going to sound bad. You're going to like hear me click the table and you're going to hear the mouse move. There's nothing I can really do about it, but the show needs to go on, I guess. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and work on this big face thing, which you can see. This is more or less is what's going to be the dialogue system. I have it set up just enough that I know it does work, but I don't really have a lot of functional components that we can actually test in game. So for the most part, this is going to work like just any JRPG or any kind of old school games dialogue system. You're going to have a character on the left, character on the right, and text moving in the middle. We may do more in the future, like put a caret on the side here, so that way you know that this guy's the one who's talking, or this guy's the one who's talking. You maybe move the text to the left or right, or change colors. But that's kind of flavorization of the system. In reality, the simplest way we need it to work is we just need some kind of UI object, which is what we have. So we have a dialog object. And that dialog object we have, if we can actually go over here, we have the text box, the left face, and the right face. We can change these because these are images, so we can actually select and change these. In theory, what we'll do is we'll change these based on what's going on. So if you have more than one character in the scene, you may have character faces flip back and forth, doing whatever, talking to each other. It is highly simplistic. We do have scaling handled. So if you notice how this looks a little crunched and everything else, this is actually the system scaling for us. This was a little tricky to get working, and you notice how over here this doesn't really work very well. The main way this is targeted after is this is targeted to make sure it works on this scale, and then everything else is kind of just, it kind of works. So we know for sure just cycling through all the scales that we do have actually have it working, at least for the majority of the aspect ratios. It's when you start getting like free aspect ratios, when you can actually rescale the monitor, is when you're going to start running into issues. So if you have some really odd resolutions or ultra wides or whatever, it's not going to look good, and there's nothing I'm really going to be able to do for it at the moment without doing a lot of work. You will notice that I did actually, if I can get my mouse here, where did my mouse go? There it goes. I did actually move these text over here from the top to here. This is due to how the aspect ratios are working, so when you actually do this smaller, there's not a lot of space up here. These aren't really meant for debug, so these actually probably will not end up in the final version. We'll probably use some kind of other mechanic to do all that stuff for it, so there is a lot more GUI work to do in the future. Anyways, let's at least get the dialogue stuff running. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to be able to update the dialogue. Now the code is already set up, so if I actually go and find the dialog system, which I've just attached to the UI, that way it's not a part of this, because I want to be able to disable this entire thing, make this entire part disappear without actually doing anything. So if you have more components here, more stylization, more flavor, I don't have to keep track of everything. I can just disable the entire parent and it's gone. That is actually handled in here. It actually does keep track of the parent object, it keeps track of the text object, it keeps track of the two images, and that's all this component has on the surface level. When we actually do get into the actual code bit of it, the code is really simplistic. I haven't actually fully tested this. I just added the queue this morning. Or actually, I think I did it yesterday and I worked on it more this morning. It doesn't matter. Time is irrelevant. But we have an update cycle. Update cycle just basically turns it on and off. So if we don't have anything in the queue, we turn it off. If we have something in the queue, we turn it on. Get the next object in the queue. As long as we have a current, we start doing the logic. If we have a timer enabled on the object, it will start to cycle through and actually tick the object down until eventually clears it, and then it will of course display the next one. I might put a delay between displays. I haven't really thought that one through, but once again that's back to the flavorization where we're going to have more detail and everything else going. Display next is pretty simple, just dequeues it, and of course we have an add queue option which we're going to use here in a bit to actually put stuff into this display. Now the actual data is really cool. So we have a data entry object. The data entry object uses the I want to say new. It's new to me, but I don't know how long it's been out. I think it's been out for like half a year or more. The scriptable object. This lets us pretty much make a data piece, and if we can actually find it. I don't want to say it's in scripts. It's actually, I think, in objects. And then it's dialog. Here we go. It actually lets us create these little simple objects here, which actually have data in here, actually have a texting. Really cool thing I discovered is you can actually put this above something and actually make it do a text box, and actually even get it to a scroll box if you want to. But so we have the name of the character shown on the left or right side. So we will eventually have an entry here where we'll have a name box above here, and we'll actually have an ability to change the image to go with this. So this will be something else I'll have to stick in here later. I just didn't get to it. We're going to start with character names first, which we'll get into another episode. And then we'll make it flip back and forth and everything else, so get the name to change. We have the time before clearing. This is irrelevant though when we do have the required confirm. So required confirm is where you click a button to go next. These will be exclusively used for like introduction dialogue. So when you load up the level, there'll be a little bit of dialogue you can run. This will prevent you as a player from traveling around and triggering the next set of dialogue or triggering an event. Because what we want to avoid, we really want to avoid the situation where there's dialogue happening at the same time as combat. Because when you have combat going, you can do combat or you can read the dialogue. You cannot do both. Some people will say they can, but the majority of people will not remember the dialogue or will not pay attention to the combat properly, and you'll basically, the experience will be less because of that. So what I want to do is make sure that dialogue does happen and there's nothing else going on the screen. There's no movement, there's no anything, so we'll have a pause game state. And then when the dialogue's off, then you can play the game, do the game thing, and the next time you get dialogue, it'll pause again. There will be some dialogue that will be on screen that I don't really care. That'll be like really side notes, maybe two characters bickering with each other, maybe some tips popping up going like, if you use this weapon, it does this thing. Stuff that is okay to put on the screen because I don't really care if you pay attention to it. The combat would be more important than the dialogue in that case. But in cases where the dialogue is important, like telling you story bits, telling you what your mission is, then pausing is really useful to be able to do that, or require and confirm. Require and confirm will basically keep you in position where you can't move and will require you to click the button. Pausing will, of course, then also make sure you can't move and then nothing else is happening around you at the same time. We're not going to get to doing those two probably in this video. We'll see how things go. What we want to get done is just popping the dialogue on the screen. And we have a bit of dialogue going. I still have to go through and proofread a lot of this. So we have 6 sections. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to fit in here. We may want to figure out some way we can put a character limit on here and we know like how many characters will fit in this. And if it's too long, then we put some kind of error here going, hey, you need to make another dialogue box. Because what I just want to do is each one of these needs to be a single frame, and then you make more than one frame to do all your dialogue for the entire mission. So we're, of course, in the tutorial mission. So I want to do really basic introduction where we just say hello, and the introduction is, I tried to be somewhat funny about it. So like, welcome to Simulator Tech for Duration. Doesn't care about your story, which I kind of want to be an important part of this because I don't want somebody coming in here with their recruit or veteran or whatever and being treated differently. And I also don't want the situation where it really matters. So basically this guy's going to do is go, okay, you're a rookie veteran, you get to use a simulator for training. What kind of training really depends on what you're here to complete. So he basically is hinting at it doesn't matter what you do here, you don't have to complete the training. And then he recommends if you're new, you need to do movement aiming training. If you're not, calibrate your weapons in each of the things. So it's basically no matter if you're new or veteran, you get to go do the same exact things. It's meant to be slightly funny for those people that pick up on it. And then of course there was actually some important information, like there's going to be an armory. So the plan I actually do want to do with this level is right off to the left here, maybe, to have an equipment room that has every gun in the game and has a vehicle in the game. And you can go up to and you can switch out the vehicles and switch out the weapons, so that way you can go through these, experiment with different weapon combinations, experiment with playstyles, and just kind of get used to the vehicles. Because some vehicles are going to be faster than others, and some vehicles are going to behave differently on the movement if we ever get to that point, of course, in the game development. Right now we have a tank, but we are going to have cars. Cars are going to drive differently. So right now with the tank, and it might be best if I just hit play to explain this part. Throat's really dry here, so I'm going to get some drink. There we go. So with the tank here, and we actually messed with the camera, by the way, and zoomed it out more. I'm still experimenting with the camera. But with the tank, you can spin on the spot. So you can actually spin here. And that'll be almost exclusive to tracked vehicles. When it comes to how cars will behave, cars will be like this, where you can just kind of veer left and right, will end up being. So trying to do a turn will actually be a lot harder. And the tank kind of behaves the same way. I actually need to increase the turn radius of the tank while moving to give it a much better turn. Because right now, if we just hold down the W and the S key, you see I've got this kind of circular movement going on. And this is purely just because the rotation speed and the velocity kind of result in this kind of donut circle behavior. But in reality, what you'd want to have happen is a lot tighter turns with tanks. Tanks actually can turn remarkably fast. They can do some pretty cool tricks. We also could do like a skill level system for this, where you actually could increase your turn with the vehicles, or maybe a level up mechanic for the tanks themselves. That'll actually give you a reason to keep multiple vehicles around so you can level them up. But that's maybe something we won't do, maybe something we will do, who knows. Dialogue is more important at the moment. So let's go ahead and get this. So I did start on this before we actually made this video, before I made the video, is I was starting to get into making the dialogue welcome box. So I have a box here, and it is a trigger. Now I literally just need to make a component or script on here that will just dump all 6 of these messages into the dialog queue and get them slowly ticking over. So it's going to be really simple. I mean, once we get the GUI stuff up there and everything, it's not hard. So let's go ahead and make a script. And we'll go ahead and put this in the map, trigger, and we have an area trigger already. And what this guy is set up to do is that when you get into an area, it triggers action. So we could end up doing dialogue as an action. And you know what, that might not be a horrible idea, because you know the advantage of doing that is if we make our dialogue an action object, then we can theoretically recycle the trigger. So let's go ahead and click our dialog welcome here, and let's just drag an area trigger right on here. We have no actions here in the moment, and we have a do trigger, so this will actually cycle, make sure it only triggers once, so we won't have to worry about a re-triggering, which is good. We want to go into actions here, and then we're going to want to do script, and we're actually going to want to make sure we open one of these. So yeah, trigger action. So we're just going to copy this code right here, and then we're going to make a script here first. So this would be, I'm going to start renaming these at some point. So this is going to be action. I think I can get away with renaming these at some. So I kind of dislike how I went about this, because the unit is how this should be is like trigger action dialogue, which I'm just going to call this in the moment here, but at some point in the future what I'm going to do is get rid of the trigger prefix. But I think I put the trigger prefix there for a reason, because I think action is too generic of a word. It might conflict with something else in C. But let's go ahead and get this, and we're just going to copy this whole bit, put this in here, and then we're going to customize. So we don't care about a target, and we don't need this. So what we are going to need is a public dialog entry. And this is just, it's going to be dialog, pretty much is what this will be, or dialog array. And then when we get this, we're going to need some way to get a hold of our dialog object. So we are going to need a start script. And let me go ahead and look at trigger action, make sure there's nothing in the super that is going to conflict. So yeah, there's nothing in here. This is pretty much a generic thing. So that's good. What I might end up coming to do is actually turning the triggers actions into a scriptable object as well, because I mean, look at this. There's nothing really going on in here. These are really simple. And that might actually be really useful too, because then it might solve other problems with instantiation and behavior and everything else. I don't know. I'm going to definitely have to do more research. But we are going to need to store our dialog handler. We don't want to manually set this, but I do want to make sure it's public so I can check in the serialization to see it's there. So this will be void awake. We want to do this on awake rather than start in case things change in the scene. Usually the only thing you want to do with start is stuff that you know is never going to change. Like if you know that your character is always going to have body parts or always going to have a collider on it, then doing start is pretty good. Awake is more useful because this gets called every time the object is enabled, disabled, and stuff like that. Where start is only called when the object is actually put into the scene. It's actually not called repeatedly. At least that's the impression I've been given, also reading forums and stuff. I could be wrong, there could be more to it and more behavior to it, but awake seems to be a better way to handle this. So we're going to need a handler, and we're going to need to do this from the scene, and I'm trying to remember how to do this. I believe I can just quite literally do handler equals game object dot get component, and I can do this, and it should find it in the scene. But I don't think that's correct. I also need to see if I'm making sure I'm spelling everything's correctly here. It already says access to non-static member game object. The reference is required to access a non-static object. So maybe we only need this part. Does that actually work? Okay, so I think I have another object that actually does do this. I think it is the entities themselves. So let's get in here, and hopefully it doesn't crash on me. I didn't want to open bullet, but I did open it anyways. Okay, so this actually does find object of type. So find object of type. So we're going to actually replace it with that because I think it'll behave different. I think get component is going to search only our own object, where find object is going to search the scene. So that should work. And then we just want to check to make sure dialog handler is the correct name for this object. Because this should be inside the UI. And it is dialog handler. I also wanted to check my method inside of it too. We are waiting on Unity to compile that. I think Unity needs to thread itself a little bit when it comes to compiling, because the whole UI freezing during compile is a bit obnoxious. So this looks good, and it is called dialog handler. That looks good. So what we want to do is add dialog, which I'm going to actually capitalize this to make sure I'm staying consistent with C. I know not everything's capitalized, but I make effort where I can. Other spots I don't really want to, because refactoring is not an easy job when I'm using Notepad for everything. So with our trigger here, we just want to do for each, and then dialog entry, and dialog array. And then we want to basically do handler dot add dialog, and then basically entry, because we just want to dump it in there. We don't really care what else is going on. With this being an action, this means we can recycle the action. There's no real special behavior with how this behaves. You literally are just getting your handler, and then you're just dumping stuff into the handler. So this is really simplistic. Our trigger handling, when it comes to that, is actually handled by the area manager, so we're good. That is probably one of the more simpler things. It's also the beauty of making recyclable objects. So we want to do dialog welcome here, and we want to add a component, because we're just going to add the component directly to this. And this would be trigger action dialog. So we have an array, and for our array, which I hope this is easy, actually we also want to make sure we drag this up here. What I might end up doing is creating some special behavior here where this could automatically find objects on itself. What we might have is I don't want to make a special version, but doing a special version called self-trigger might be useful, because then that would cut down the amount of work you had to do. So maybe you have like a self-trigger area or something like that. Because then if you code a landmine, for example, but to be honest, drag and dropping is not too big of a deal. So going out of your way to make special code is unnecessary in some cases. So that does that, and then we need to go to our objects, which, by the way, I did figure out a really cool feature. So I think in one of the videos I was getting frustrated that when I was trying to open multiple project windows, that I was having issues keeping them open. So what you can actually do is click lock up here, and then you can actually go down and navigate into the subfolders, and this will stay here. So let's go, I can show this actually working. It will highlight it though. It's not UI. Dialog, tutorial dialog. I did not lock this up here though. But yeah, you can see how that stayed there, so that's something I figured out, which I'm really happy about. We got a dialog here, and we just need to go in. I need to lock this is what I need to do. So that stops doing that. Grab these. Oh, is it not good? There it goes. So we can just drag this in there. So that means we actually are storing our objects here, which means we're not instantiating them when we're doing this and just pulling data. So that's going to make this a lot easier. Supposedly this actually helps with memory and data storage and stuff. So that way this object here, which is our dialog welcome, is not instantiating all of this data for us. These are just their own little objects, and this means this size of this object is smaller. I'm actually going to save the scene before we test. I've actually had Unity crash a few times, and I have lost information recently. But I've been doing stupider things like working on paintbrushes and stuff. And I have been not cleaning up after myself with the editors, and the editor windows have been crashing. So this should get the handler when we start. So let's hit play. I'm going to leave this locked up here because I want to see this actually click the handler. Okay. So we have triggered this, because we can say this has been triggered. This has not updated though. Which is weird. You know what we haven't actually done? So we have a current. We grab the current here, but we never actually changed the text. Equals current dot text. That means we're gonna have to reset this though. We have no actual pause mechanic at the moment, so we can't really see the switch, and we have no confirm mechanic. We could add a button real quick. Yeah, it's a button. We need one anyway, so taking a little bit of extra time in this video to make a button was not that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and get back over to the scene window, which is all the way, or for our GUI window, it's over here. How do we want to do this button? Because if we put it down here, and we just make sure we don't wrap back under, that'll be okay. It's just not a guarantee that it will ever be okay, because we cannot prevent text from flowing underneath the button, which is what I'm thinking. And GUI design is not a good idea. That's what I'm more or less relating to. So we get a button, and we'll just put a button right down here, and we'll call this button, if I unlock this so I can get to it, this would be Dialog confirm button. And then what we'll just say on its, where's this text actually at? So I'll click here. There's an image. We actually might replace the image already. Normal color. Let's change that real quick. So not something I could change. Okay, so oh yeah, you can do that. I'm gonna make that green just for fun. There should be a text option here. In it. Oh, you know what the text option is? It's on the sub component. I forgot about that. So we just click on the next. And remove that. And then we want to make sure this is centered. I don't really like the way that looks because if we actually go into the game window, that's blurry. So what I'm going to do is actually delete this. And then I'm going to add Text Mesh Pro because, yeah, look how nicer that looks. If we actually go to the game view, it's not blurry. We're actually using Text Mesh Pro for this, and I'm actually using Text Mesh Pro for the signs in the web walker. So we have actually signs right here to make sure you know what the tests are. These are really, I want to say temporary because I'm probably going to find a better way to do this. Use icon imagery so that way if somebody who doesn't speak English does play this game, even though I do not plan to actually do translations for this game anytime soon just because I don't have the resources. Because I imagine, I think it's going to cost me a couple $100s to translate this game. And that's if I'm lucky. It's like actually paying cheap for stuff. So let's get text here. Let's just toy with it real quick. Button. So I'm going to make sure this is called next. I want an image in here that's an arrow, but no, just toy with it. See what we get. UI, image. Can we find a simple button? Yes, we do have simple buttons here. This is just going to be a temporary image because we're probably going to use something else for this. Oh, can I not rotate you? Oh, that's your position. I'll rotate right here. Yes, okay, cool. And then we want to scale this down. So we'll say 0.5, 0.5. Really simple next button, just to remind me that I need to come back in here and do a nicer one. What we'll probably do is that'll probably be part of the button itself in the future. But it's there, so we have it. It looks okay. That's a really simple button we can now press. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a method inside of this right here, and we're going to want to make pretty much a object thing. I hope it's just called button, so we're going to call this confirm button, because what we're going to want to do is if we require confirm, we're going to want to make sure the confirm button is enabled. If we don't, we want to disable. So I'm going to Google this rather than even try. Ignore that. I was trying to figure out how audio cables worked earlier to fix my whole microphone problem. We actually have, because right now how this is working weirdly is we're transmitting microphone audio from one PC to another, then back to the other, and then transferring speaker back and forth. Multi-PC recording setups are confusing. So Unity enable button. I want to see if this is literally exactly the same as it is for the game components. Image sprite block. Okay, so I think this guy's actually asking a bit of a different question. He's just disabling the interaction. I actually want to say it's just same. So if it is correct, it is the same as enabling and disabling a component. Wow, Unity 3D website is slow. So we're gonna just assume this is actually the same. We're gonna do confirmed dot enabled equals true, and then we're gonna come up here and we're gonna make sure that this actually is false. The reason why we're doing this every tick rather than doing it down here is I just want to make sure this stuff is always off. We can polish and optimize at a later date. There's no worry about it, especially since there's only going to be one object on the screen. Less likely to fail is a good way to think about it. It's compiling that script, so we're going to have to sit here and watch the pinwheel at F. Watch it error it out. Let's see what this is doing. So that's not loading. Oh no, it just as soon as it loaded. Okay. So this looks like it is the same way. Yeah, it is enabled. Cool. It hasn't errored out either, so that's good. Let's reshare. Get our confirm button right there, so we actually have access to it. And then what we need to do is create a method in here. It'll be like public void on confirm clicked. And how this will work is it will pretty much, let me do this actually small, because actually what I'm literally going to do is do this. The reason I actually have current null here is I just want to make sure clear last, make sure it's cleared. Get next if we have any. If not, clear. No, actually, let's just move this up here because what we do is go if current. Oh no, we don't even need to do if current equals null. We just clear the last entry. That gets rid of that. So we just every time display next is called, we just clear whatever's in there. That'll work. And anytime current is equal to null, we just try to get the next. We just pull the next. And we only pull the next if we have something in queue. And then on click, we just delete the current. That's pretty straightforward. Actually, no, it's not straightforward. We still need to do... No, we don't need to clear. Because I was thinking, like, maybe we need to make this a method, and maybe we need to call it from here, and just call clear. I'll call reset or something. But I just realized, if we don't have anything in queue, if we do have something in queue, it's going to clear. If we don't, it's going to disable the actual dialog. So that should work. We don't have to think about it too much. Now we just have to come over here. Once it does its pinwheel of death compile, it should give us access, and we just click add, which, yeah, we have to wait for Unity to catch up. Click, there we go. Runtime only function. So I kind of like the fact that we could do an editor and runtime. Can we do just an editor only? That would be kind of cool. We could do this here, and can I not? Can I drag? Okay, yes, you can do it in an object here. So dialog handler on confirm clicked. There we go. So that'll basically invoke that method every time we click the button. And then in theory, the button should disable itself if we have a timed event. And what I want to do, let's go into here. Set this to 3. Unpause that, so that way that'll give us a test guaranteed that we know that the timer system's working. Pause system is something I don't forget to, but let's go ahead and hit save scene, make sure everything's saved. And let's get play and see everything's running. Welcome to the simulator. I'm assigned tech. That works. Before you go on about your story, I don't care. Rookie or veteran, you get to use the simulator for training. What kind of training really depends on what you were assigned here to complete. So basically, free whatever you do. Okay, so we got some clipping So we actually do need to work on maybe make sure the text floats to the top. If you're new, I recommend the movement and aiming test screen, which I like how nicely that is one line, but it looks kind of weird. If you're not, I recommend calibrating your equipment in each. You know what, I may actually need to think about redoing that line. After that, the armory is a good place to check out some new gear, then run the test again to familiar yourself with the differences. And our timer script failed. So it looks like our timer script is not doing what it's supposed to do. And you know why it's not doing what it's supposed to do? Because this needs to be... No, this is correct. Because if clear timer is greater than 0, do this. You know what we forgot to do? Right here, we forgot to set the current time. This is kind of what happens when I code like half of something and then go to sleep and then come back and try to code the rest of it. So you know what we actually also need to do here? If current does not equal null. And the reason I want to do this is there could be a situation where null got into the list for some whatever reason. We don't want this script to crash. Even though Unity will kind of catch it for us and kind of prevent the game from crashing, that is not a good excuse to prevent stupidity. And what is Dialog's variable called? Seconds before clear. Okay, can I edit the script? There we go. Wow, why did I call it that? It's really long. You know what I should do is I should come through here and do this. There's a version of this where you can actually name each of these, so that way they don't reset in the editor. I think I need to come through and do that just so I can rename the variables so they're a little bit more intuitive when it comes to the code. Because you want to have variable names sometimes different in code than they are at other places. But that should work. And then we just undo this, hit play. You know, another thing I need to do, I need to add another checkbox over here called require timer, because there may be a situation when you want to have a confirm and you want to have a timer. So you want to go, okay, you have 3 seconds, then you can skip. What we could do is actually have a thing here called show skip button. And if you click show skip button and the confirm is not enabled, then it says skip. If not, it hits next. It still went through too fast. So either it's not working, or 3 seconds is a lot faster than I think it is. So current DQ, current doesn't equal null. Clear time equals current seconds to clear. Dialog sets. We know the dialog part works. Why isn't the timer not working? Time.delta time. So this actually should not clear very fast because this is delta time, which should be the time between frames. So that should work. So let's do .log. And what we'll do is we'll just output current.text. And we'll do something like that so I can encapsulate it so I can read it a little easier. And then what we'll also do is come down here and we'll go enabling dialog or setting dialog. And then we can come in here and we'll be able to see how it behaves. Unexpected current. What? Line 56? That should be in the context. Can you not? Let's do this instead. Because there may be like specific behavior with how this works. Make sure I didn't leave. Oh yeah, actually that's what's using that. I forgot a semicolon. Did I do the same thing down here? I did the same thing down here. It should compile. There it goes. And what we can do is stare at the console, and we should be able to see it actually start our dialog. Welcome simulator. Okay, so we can see down the dialog. Click next. Click next. Click next. Click next. So it's set dialog. I know exactly what's wrong. So we forgot to check to see if we have a current. So we forgot to basically ask, do we have a current object here? So if we have something current, we need to be able to see it. So let's rerun this. Okay, welcome to simulator, training, recommendation. After that, good. Make sure you got all that. Don't come with a repeat button, and it turned itself off. We can still see the button though. Did the whole UI turn itself off? The whole UI turned itself off. That's amazing. And I messed that one up. Because the panel is dialog display. Oh, because I did game object to set active instead of dialog panel to set active. Magic there are. This is what it pays to pay attention to what you're doing and not just throw code at the wall until it sticks. The button didn't seem to disable itself, because if we don't require confirm, we want to disable the button. How do we do it this way? Because we do the same thing up here with the dialog panel, so why did I... Oh, because we grabbed the game object of the dialog panel. Whatever, let's just try it. See if it compiles. If it compiles, it should work. If it doesn't compile, well, it doesn't work. So UI button doesn't have that. So what we actually want to do, I'm going to take this. What we can do is do .gameObject. And disable its game object. Because apparently just setting it enabled doesn't seem to work. Does not contain set active. Okay. Because the button is actually a component here, so like this right here, that's an image component. These are a rect transform component. Okay, that looks good. Although, you know, instead of disabling it, just making it do the skip button would be useful. Because you may not want to sit here and just wait for that to disappear. That makes sense. Either way, the dialog system works, so I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here, and I'll be back with another episode, and hopefully between then I get a microphone, and if not, we're stuck with this.